I would like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for February the 25th, 2025. Madam Clerk, please open the board for roll call. Members, at this time, I'd ask you to please take attendance, but before you do so, please log in. All right, have all members signed in? Madam Clerk, please take the roll. No, I'm fine. Turn her on. Yeah, just turn her on down there in the corner.
Is it on? Oh, okay. Mr. Chairman, you have 17 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. Members, are there any personal orders or announcements before we begin? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have some guests here today that I'd like for you and the committee to help me make welcome. Got my mayor of Bolivar, Tennessee, Mayor Julius McTizick here. I've got his assistant, Ms. Carabeth Ray. I've got Mr. Dylan Hill here. I got Mr. Dave Ray, and I also got Miss Vicki Walton. Would you help me make them welcome from Bolivar, Tennessee? And I probably ought not to say this, but this mayor may be my replacement coming in. He's about as close to Johnny Shaw as you can get.
Well, thank you all for being here. All right, I think Chairman Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I have with me today from the district, Miss Maddie Maynard. Maddie is a senior at Friendship Christian School. She's the salutatorian and off to the University of Tennessee next year, and she's shadowing me today. Maddie, stand up and y'all make her feel welcome.
All right, anyone else like to be recognized for personal orders? Representative Gant.
Mr. Chairman, did I hear that Representative Shaw was retiring?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
You're not, Representative Shaw, you're not recognized. You need to keep your hands down. All right, next, Representative Love, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, actually, I was coming in when it was 17 members and I was 18. That's why I was raising my hand, just to be present. So
You are present.
Thank
You've been recorded now. All right. Members, let me make one quick announcement before we do move on. And this is also not only for the members, but also for those who will be presenting. Of course, we have the new microphone system, and it's from the old microphone system. You know, your first initial reaction is to hit that button to be able to speak. But we are actually going to be working that from up here. My assistant will be doing that. So all you have to do is, if you'll just wait and pause until you see that red light come on before you begin speaking, you don't have to worry about turning the mic on or off. So we'll take care of that. All right. Now that we've got that out of the way, members, we do have today, it looks like a total, I think, of 5 budget hearings today. So we are going to begin with the Department of Correction. And again, members, you can refer to your dashboard for all the presentation documents. So before we begin, without objection, we're going to go out of session. We are now out of session, and I will ask the Department of Corrections to please come forward. And Commissioner Strada, you are ready to begin when you are ready, sir. Thank you again for being here, you and your staff. And if you would, please just identify you and who you have with you today.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hicks and members of the committee. With me today, I have Assistant Commissioner Gail Fenkel for Rehabilitative Services, Chief of Staff Richard Muckle, my CFO and Assistant Commissioner of Finance, Valerie Murtha, Brandon Kenlon, my Director of Budget, and Assistant Commissioner of HR, Heather Sanford. Okay. With me, so like most correctional agencies across the country, our department is challenged with reducing our correctional officer vacancy rate. Over the past 2 years, I've made recruiting and retaining quality staff one of my top priorities. Today, I'm pleased to tell you we've taken steps to offer competitive compensation that reflects the critical services correctional professionals provide to the state of Tennessee. Just last week, the starting salary for correctional officers increased to $51,204, with tiered increases bringing CO salaries to $60,720 after 18 months. Our statewide correctional officer vacancy is 26.9%, which is down 2% from last year. We've seen gains at most facilities, especially our Northeast, Bledsoe, and Deborah K. Johnson facilities. Other initiatives we have used include the addition of floating crews, rapid hire events, etc. We've made significant strides in reducing the augmentee overtime in both hours and cost. 2 years ago, we averaged 14,000 augmentee overtime hours per month. This year, we're averaging 37% fewer hours, less than 9,000 hours a month. Likewise, this year, we are projecting to spend almost 50% less dollars than those spent in fiscal year 23. We continue to work diligently to enhance staff and offender safety. Specifically, I've made investments totaling more than $12 million for equipment, including body scanners, metal detectors, mail scanning devices, and emergency response equipment. Through the use of intelligence-driven targeted searches, we've been able to reduce the amount of contraband entering our facilities. However, this remains a challenge for correctional agencies across the country. We've also continued to work collaboratively with the sheriffs and local jails. We've increased our intakes by nearly 15% last year, and our in-custody population is 20,000, while we've seen an increase of about 1,000 inmates from last year. We've also been able to bring more beds online through the completion of capital projects and staffing improvements at some facilities. We have seen great strides in programming available in our prisons across the state. Through provided funding, we have grown vocational trade certificates across the state and almost doubled to over 29 our TCAP programs in less than 2 years, from 16 to 29, with more to come in the future. In addition, we currently offer 10 college and university programs with a new TCAP building and trades program at Turney Center beginning last week with a maximum capacity of students enrolled. There are 2 new TCAP programs set to begin in June at our South Central facility. Vocational trade programs and certificates include a wide range of offerings from welding, building trades to culinary arts and computer programming. Since the introduction of tablets for programming as of February 13th, there have been nearly 100,000 programs completed with over 21,000 certificates earned. 6 prisons are live, and we will continue to add the other prisons over the upcoming months. The electronic health record development is complete, and implementation will begin with the first 3 locations going live at the end of March. Now I'd like to highlight TDOC's budget and some of the items we requested this year. The department's FY26 recommended budget is $1.5 billion, and we have 2 reductions totaling nearly $5 million and cost increases totaling $99 million. The department was intentional about requesting investments in what we know works to improve outcomes. Cost increases include $36 million for the correctional officer salary increase that I mentioned earlier, $14 million for the clinical services contract, and $21 million for hepatitis C treatment. In closing, I want to take this opportunity to publicly acknowledge and thank our more than 5,000 dedicated staff. Our staff have extraordinarily difficult jobs, and I can't thank them enough for their sacrifices. And I thank you for allowing us to be here today, and we're here to answer any questions the committee may have.
All right, Commissioner, thank you very much. And I do have several folks on the list here wanting to speak. And we're going to begin with Chairman Hulsey. Chairman Hulsey, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you folks for being here today. I appreciate your time and your effort, and I agree with you, Commissioner. You got some really good folks working for you. To start off with, Mr. Chairman, if you'll indulge me, I have several topics and several questions.
Yes, ma'am. Let me say this before we go. As I call on you, we'll just go back and forth. And of course, if we get into running dialogue, or debate, I may stop you. But other than that, once you're recognized, you may go back and forth with the presenter. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You're recognized.
You mentioned a retention rate that you're working on, and you mentioned that you have about a 25% vacancy rate. I was looking at the SALT report on staff for 24 was 712. That I think is only 11 shy of being an all-time high. And the assaults on inmates or offenders was 686, and I think that's all-time high. And I was going to ask the question dealing with vacancy rates. With the proliferation of drugs and how many inmates test positive, how many are treated medically for overdoses, and the amount of weapons that you confiscate and see, it would make it very difficult for somebody to work in that environment. My question is, the inmates that I've talked to who come out of the facility, and I ask about weapons or I ask about cell phones, they say that that the staff is who brings in the cell phone. I ask, how much does it cost? The answer is about $2,800. I say, how do you pay a staff member or a guard $2,800? And they say on a Cash App. My question is this: with those rates of safety issues for staff that's in the facility, how do you expect somebody to apply for a job when those kinds of issues are what they're going to deal with and seem to be getting worse, and the safety record seems to be getting worse? How do you hope to retain folks in that environment? And the second follow-up question was that is how many staff were actually arrested or charged for bringing drugs or paraphernalia into an institution in 24?
Yeah, well, I would disagree with some of that narrative that it's the staff just bringing in contraband. I'm sure that a former inmate would probably say that, but there's also their visitors. Contraband comes in a number of ways, and yes, staff is one of the ways that occurs. Visitors are another way. We have to deal with drone drops, which is another way contraband is introduced into the facility. We have taken factors to mitigate that with some of the technology that we've put in place with our body scanners, our metal detectors at our locations and in our institutions, and we have seen a reduction of our weapons and drugs. We're not immune from that type of issue inside of our prisons. No prison is immune from that. What we tell our staff and people who want to work for us is we actually have a rewarding career. You have an opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life each and every day. You come inside of a prison, you help rehabilitate an offender and make him or her a better person and prepare them to come back into the community. So they have a rewarding job if they work for TDOC. It's not just what people perceive on TV or others say. I've encouraged everybody and anyone who wants to come into our prisons to see what we're doing, to see our vocational trades, to see how our staff work, to see the equipment that we do, the policy changes that we do. I believe that our state facilities and our private facilities are safe, but we're no different than whether it's federal or any other state in the United States that has problems with drugs and weapons. We use technology to assist us, and we look at our training and we try to improve our training to help us reduce contraband. So I would have to disagree with the narrative that nobody would want to come work for us because we've already seen a 2% reduction in our vacancy rate. And since we have announced the pay raise, we've seen such an uptick in the amount of staff that are applying for our jobs. And within the last year, I've attended a number of Academy of graduations, and we've had some of the largest Academy of graduations in the history of TDOC. So that's how I see the agency.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd like to ask you a question about sentencing credits. From what I can dig and read, only about 30% of the disciplinary write-ups result in the loss of sentencing credits. And that 30% of assaults on staff with weapons result in no reduction or loss in sentencing credits. Now, I know that the month you commit the offense in, you don't gain sentencing credits for that month. But aside from that, there is no loss 30% of the time with assault on staff with weapons. 37% of the time without a weapon assault on staff results in no loss. 47% of assaults on inmates with weapons results in no loss of sentencing credits. 61% of assaults on inmates without a weapon results in no loss. 70% of offenders charged with possession of weapons have no loss of sentencing credits, and 77% of offenders charged with possession of a cell phone have no loss of sentencing credits. What is your reply to that?
I'm going to turn that over to my chief of staff because we do have stats to discuss, to talk about what you just mentioned.
Thank you. Richard Muckle, Chief of Staff. So the department's been working on reviewing our disciplinary procedures over the last several years. Some of us were here testifying before the ad hoc committee that you chaired, Chairman Halsey, and this has been an ongoing process. One of the things that we've looked at both in our own internal processes and in partnership with the Inmate Disciplinary Oversight Board is just how those removal of credits are being applied. In the year 2022, only about 2,253 days of credits were removed from inmates through the course of the entire year for disciplinary reasons. In the year 2024, calendar year, more than 320,000 credits were removed from more than 2,200 inmates. I don't have specific numbers to the points that you were making about percentages of which ones did or didn't. But what I can tell you is overwhelmingly the discipline is being applied not just swiftly, but certainly in removing credits for those infractions.
Okay, one other question and then a comment and then I'll be through. For the last 25 years, the legislature has received on October 1st or before that, the yearly statistical report. For 25 years, it had all the data in it that this legislature needed to make accurate decisions on finances, and that's the reason for this committee on the justification of money going to arms of government. The last 2 years, that statistical report went from 160 pages down to about 30. There was no statistical analysis in it. It was like a summary and overview. And there was no recidivism analysis that was always there. There was no salary comparison analysis that was always there. There was no bed space, active and inactive, for each of the 14 prisons that was always there, but which brings up a question that I want to ask. And that is the numbers that you gave for the inmate population. What I can dig out and show is that there's actually been a reduction in your felon admissions by almost 3,700 inmates. It appears that the inmate population is declining from the numbers that I can see, which brings up a question about the safety valve. We've been on the safety valve for years, and of course, the safety valve forces the parole board to release people before they really should be released. When we have no statistical analysis that we can look at on active bed space and total bed space, of course, then you worry that the numbers and the beds are being manipulated to keep you in a safety valve posture. And if you would address that, but I want to carry on with some other these statistical things that were supposed to be in the report and aren't anymore.
Sure. So I guess first to that, thank you for the question. One of the areas I oversee is research and planning. That's who does all of these publications. I would offer to you that we have revised a number of reports, not the least of which is our annual report that I think grew by more than 300%. So there's a fair amount of additional information in that document. I recall some of the statistical abstract documents were republications of other monthly pieces of information. I don't think that we stopped reporting recidivism or staff salary comparisons, but I guess I could check into that. I'll also offer that for the statistical abstract specifically, our team is reviewing how those things are being published. We've actually talked to our director of research and planning just last week about putting polls up on that site so that we can get a good gauge of what information is useful to the stakeholders who are reviewing that information and make sure that the publications support it. We also added a new document on our website. It's called Corrections at a Glance. And while I recognize your comment regarding the capacity, doesn't appear in the, I think, formally bed space and operating capacity report, those figures are also captured in that monthly roll up of a variety of different pieces of information. It specifically talks about population in each facility as well as overall system capacity.
Another one of those statistical analysis is the felon commitments by county. That wasn't in your overview. The summary of assaults, you had a summary, but they're not all Class A and by prison. There was no report of the security designations or the correctional staffing patterns for each prison. That was always there for 25 years. There was no vacancy or turnover rates for each prison. That were statistics that was always in there. The whole point of all that is all 7 of those things that I mentioned to you are dictated by state law, that you include that in this report that you report every year. The safety valve also by state law says that the governor's supposed to be notified, I think, every 30 days that you're on safety valve. And so is the chairman of the respective committees with state government on the Senate side and the House side. And I don't think that's been done in years. What can you expect in the future with your yearly statistical report? Will you go back to what's always been done and include these things that are mandated by state law?
Well, I think in general, this is good feedback for information that's valuable to stakeholders. What I will say is I don't think I would recommend going back to what was always included. As I suggested, the last full 100 and something page statistical abstract had 40 pages of duplicates from documents that were already published on our website. But again, I think that this is useful for us to know what kinds of information is needing to be published. And just to the point about what's being reported and what's not, our statutory reporting obligations are being met related to the safety valve report. We do an annual report to, I want to say it's state government and state and local, if I'm not mistaken, regarding those changes in capacity. And I think in addition to that, I don't know that there is a statute that governs statistical abstracts.
I can show it to you.
Happy to look at it.
One more question. Why do you think we've been on a safety valve for years? 95%, I believe, is what kicks off the safety valve. Do you have the numbers to show that we, for several years, have been 95% above in our population? That's my last question, and thank you, Chairman.
To the 95% question, I believe it was going above 95% is what triggers the safety valve, and I believe it's falling below 90% that triggers the removal of it. And as of our last corrections at a glance report, our operating capacity was at 91.7, so we were still above that 90% threshold. Sure.
All right. Thank you very much. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't expecting you to get to me that fast. Can you actually roll me
Be
2
happy to.
spaces?
No problem.
Thank you.
Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner, and your team for being here today. I just had a few questions regarding your budget. Since 2021, this body, Chairman Hicks and I have supported Department of Corrections through increasing your payroll by $211 million, about 18% over since that period of time. I couldn't help but notice that that increase was in part because it was very difficult for your department to hire correctional officers over that period of time. The interesting thing to me, though, is when I look at your current vacancy rate, the vacancy rate for those open positions has remained the same in spite of spending $211 million new dollars. Matter of fact, this year you're reverting $107 million from the budget back to general fund. My question is when you look at the pay scale for correctional officers and correctional officers too in the state of Tennessee, we are leading the pack as it relates to what the payroll is, and yet we still have over 1,000 vacancies, some of which 355, I think, are more than 12 months. So, the idea of providing resources in order to make sure that we find these correctional officers is something that this body, has taken very seriously. The idea that we've not been able to fill those vacancies in spite of those resources really concerns me. My question to you is if we haven't been able to do it for the last 3 fiscal years and we're reverting 70 and $100 million a year because those monies weren't used because those vacancies were open, what are we going to do this fiscal year with the same funding and the same vacancy rate of more than 1,000?
So before I turn it over to AC Stanford, our correctional officer vacancy is not at 1,000. It's hovering around 623 correctional officers that were vacant. We're faced with the same challenges that every correctional agency in the United States is facing, whether it's state or federal, with staffing concerns. We raise the rate, others raise the rate. We recruit, we're hiring. I will turn it over to AC Stanford to go over all the things that we have done to recruit and retain and our statistics to show how we have reduced our vacancies over the last few years. So if we can have Ms. Stanford's mic.
Thank you. Heather Stanford, Assistant Commissioner, Human Resources. And as Commissioner was saying, we have seen a pretty drastic reduction in vacancies after the 2021 pay increases. At that time, the vacancies in officers were around 1,100 plus. Those have dropped significantly. They continue actually to reduce every year. The issue we're seeing with having a larger reduction in the vacancies is the turnover. So we've seen over the years, we're hiring at that new pay rate very well. We've experienced significant turnover. So that is where we are focused moving forward in the retention aspect. These current pay increases are step increases. And so when new officers come in, they start at one rate, but every 6 months to 18 months, they receive increases. And so by doing that, we're hoping to get to that 18-month mark where we're then able to have them in internal academies, leadership programs, things to develop their career so they want to stay long-term. And so that's really where we're putting that focus now, so that the vacancies then will continue to decline more rapidly when we're retaining the staff. And we are seeing that trend now.
Well, thank you, Assistant Commissioner. I'm looking at the data here, and I guess maybe you guys need to get back with me, but the data from your own report says in FY 22-23, you had 1,075 vacancies with more than 355 of those being long-term. I know you're having issues as it relates to turnover, but those vacant positions are consistent over the 3 years, all being 1,075, 1,145, 1,046, with the positions averaging for being vacant for more than 12 months over 375 positions. If we're leading in pay and we're continuing to have the number of vacancies that we have, if it were my business, I'd be looking to see who's in leadership hiring the correctional officers, because maybe that might be the problem, which is why you're not able to retain folks over time. If it were my business and I had got issues with guys in the field that I couldn't retain, then I would look to my project management staff to see why no one wants to work for them. Maybe they're the problem. Because when I look at this, these 355 positions that are open for more than 12 months, that's a serious problem. And it's a problem that looks as if, based upon the numbers, has plagued corrections for more than 5 years in spite of adding $211 million. And so if there's an issue, and this body has proven, if there's an issue as it relates to pay, which we've removed, in my opinion, or there's an issue as it relates to the personnel, it might be a leadership problem. I would encourage you to look at that because I don't understand how we can be one of the highest paid correctional officer 2 roles in the Southeast and still have a vacancy problem, particularly when most of these prisons are located in areas where these would be some of the most high paying jobs in those communities.
I'm sorry, Assistant Commissioner Heather Stanford. I just want to reply in those vacancies, those are not officer vacancies, those are agency-wide. And so our officer vacancies aren't quite in those numbers. They're about half right about half of that. But I will say the pay increases currently, we are seeing an incredible amount of interest in our jobs, hundreds of applicants, and we're hiring those every week now. So I do think we've not yet seen the change from being, the highest paid. So we are starting to recruit from some law enforcement agencies who had jumped our pay, especially in our metro areas. And I think even though being one of the highest paid jobs, we still have difficulties in the rural areas just by mere population density of being able to find enough people who are qualified and able to do that job. But yes, sir, that's definitely, all those things are part of our retention initiatives now.
Finally, Chairman, thank you for that. I checked Edison in December. It says that there are currently 660 vacant correctional officer 2 positions available. That represents 10% of your total workforce that this body has allocated funding for is currently vacant. I would also like to just follow up with Chairman Halsey's comment earlier. If the state statute requires us to report something, we should be reporting it. I think it's irrelevant as it relates to whether it's located on a website or on a web browser or a report. The reporting is there for a reason, and it's not an elective. It's a requirement by statute. And so I would hope that if we are not meeting those requirements, that we would do so quickly. Thank you.
Would the department like to respond to that? Because I know I'd certainly like to hear.
Well, yeah, I'll respond to 2 things. Yeah, we will go back and take a look at those reporting requirements as mentioned here and see where, if we're not reporting something, we will make that right. On the other thing, I'd like to say, Representative Williams, myself and members of my exec team, every new leadership training program that's going on at our academy, we personally address those new supervisors and tell them the importance of retention, communication, and the importance of keeping that staff. We just started that, I think, sometime around fall of last year. So we have been looking at our frontline supervisors and addressing the need that we're hiring, and we need to keep these folks with us and talk about the new staff. So we've mentioned that. About at least 8 supervisor classes, especially as well as our chief executive officers at all of our institutions.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Williams always take my questions, so thank you, Chairman Williams.
All right, thank you. Moving on.
Yeah.
Leader Camper, you're recognized.
That was actually my question around, retaining and the money that we've been spending to get the salaries up, and so we can be competitive and we can, recruit and get people to correctional officers. In your questionnaire, there is a question about the number of vacancies, and I think I heard you say that there was 623 of them were correctional officers. So what are the other vacancies that we have that we're not able to fill? It's saying you have 1,046.
Wrong person. Yeah. There you go.
Assistant Commissioner Heather Stanford. So those are a variety of titles. We have hundreds of titles at the agency. So they can range from they could be located in probation and parole. They could be counselors, teachers, even executive positions. But most of those outside of the correctional officer series, those other vacancies are going to fluctuate as they come vacant and they're a priority. We fill those. So they're not sitting vacant, like we can't fill them. We just prioritize and they're filled as needed. So it would be hard to say without seeing the exact titles as to why one would be vacant at any time. But I do know we're putting steps in place now, and we're looking at the entire organization where we are going to do the proper position management so things aren't sitting vacant without us knowing. So we are looking at that analysis now, but they are filled outside of the correctional officer series as they vacate according to the agency priorities.
Okay, thank you for that. So could you get us a list of some, like the high volume careers that we see these vacancies in?
Absolutely.
Because looking in your reversions, part of your reversion target, I think this year is $30 million, and that's coming from these unfilled positions where you're not able to recruit people to fill them. So if you could just get us, you can send it to the chairman and he'll make sure that we get it so we can have a broader view of what's happening within the department and being able to recruit and get good staff, for Department of Corrections. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Chairman Crawford. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up with a couple of things, and I don't mean to be redundant, but please be patient. The state provided $14.8 million back in 22-23. This was reoccurring funding for the CO salaries at the private prisons. What is TDOC CO salaries compared to private prison at this time?
I don't know, core civics.
Well, as I said, our starting salaries now will be at 51,204. I don't have the starting salaries for the private prisons.
So how do we know, Mr. Speaker, how do we know that we are the highest paying if you don't know the salaries of your competitors or the other people?
Well, we do. We have an analysis of all neighboring states that we've put together, the bordering states, and we use that as our reference as for our pay to show that we're the highest paid.
Okay. Vacancies rates. How do we compare to the private businesses on vacancies?
For correctional officers or
Yes, sir.
total?
Just for correctional officers.
I believe we fare better at our vacancy rates than the privates.
Can't give me an answer, just that you're better.
Well, our vacancy rate is lower
Okay.
than those in the privates. Are you looking for a specific number for?
Well, I'm just looking compared Tennessee to other states is all I'm looking for.
Yeah, we have that. I don't know if we have that documentation handy with us, but we can submit that to the committee. We do have a sheet that we put together to show our salary compared to our neighboring state salary. So if you would like, we could send that over to the committee.
Thank you. That'd be great. I do know also that TDOC has to do a exit survey with the COs. Is that still taking place?
Yes.
According to your last exit survey report, only 9 out of 387 eligible COs responded to the exit survey. How many COs have been eligible for this survey?
Assistant Commissioner Heather Stanford, any correctional officers separating should be eligible for the survey.
And we only had 9 out of the 387 or whatever it is, yeah.
Correct, yes. And that's an issue throughout the state with engagement and exit surveys is the low response rate. So we are currently looking at other ways to get that survey delivered to get the higher response rate, SMS text, and some other ways available for the officers to reply to that.
Well, can you give me an example of other ways? Because it seems to be there's got to be a more effective way than getting 9 out of 387 responses on employment conditions.
Yeah, we're looking to invest in our own survey platform, so we're able to deliver those surveys to officers before they're already out the door. That's what the difficulty in the response rate is. If they give notice or they're leaving, they're already out the door before we can get in their email, for instance. So we're going to use text messaging.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And along the lines of my friend and colleague, Chairman Crawford, are you doing surveys right now for those that are working within your system now? And I'm speaking specifically to correction officers. And if you are, I see you nodding your head. So if you are, what are they saying? It's a great place to work. What are they saying? Are they being honest and forthright with their responses?
I would hope they are. I'm not sure. So we do get, we had a large scale engagement survey that we completed 2 years ago and then again in the last year. And so we do get responses that, bring up concerns, a lot of which we've worked on and addressed. So we're looking at the trend of that engagement, employees saying they feel safer at work. So it's better than it was 2 years ago. So we plan to continue that surveying internally. That's a large survey done by the Department of HR. So that's done annually. So we're looking to engage that more frequently. And we're also starting a new CO engagement program where we're going to be doing 60, 90, and 120-day check-ins with those new officers and their supervisors.
And in regards to the most recent survey, what's the percentage of correction officers that said they feel like the place is safe to work in or their work condition? What percentage said the place is safe to work in? Because I don't want to water down the questions.
Yeah, I don't have the data in front of me, but I can get that for you.
Okay. I have just a couple more questions. And this may be for the commissioner or whoever you designate. The violent infractions, inmate on staff, inmate on inmate, staff on inmates. I think the number that was given was 712 on staff and over 600 on inmates. How many of those assaults were turned over to a DA for prosecution?
Thanks, Richard Muckle. Thank you for the question. So in the last, I think, General Assembly is when this body passed law requiring certain infractions to be reported to the district attorneys in the jurisdiction where that prison sits. Since that time, we've reported over 2,600 variety of incidents. Those things include, most frequently, is indecent exposure and then also aggravated assault. The one thing, the caveat there, and our legal team actually reviews each of these before they're submitted to the DA's office to ensure that it meets or should meet the requirements of aggravated assault. A simple assault on its own wouldn't rise to the level of felony and then doesn't fall within that statute, though I believe that's been addressed also in the legislature here as well.
Okay, thank you. In regards to the employment, if you're experiencing significant turnover, and aside of what my friend and colleague Chairman Williams said, it sounds like it's a work condition issue. Is that the case? Are you hearing that people are leaving because of the conditions of the workplace, or what is the main reason that your turnover is so high?
I've not heard that, Assistant Commissioner Heather Stanford. I've not heard specifically work conditions. We've had cited pay, other opportunity, and supervisor.
So no one has said that these conditions here are terrible to work in, or these conditions, I'm leaving here because
Oh,
is
no, I
the
wouldn't say,
conditions.
I would not say no one has said that, but in our top 3 reasons for leaving, that's not on it.
Okay, and my last question, this is something, I didn't know what it was, so can you tell me what the private prisons contract inflator is? And it seems to be trending quite a bit north. Can you tell me what that is and why it's costing us, or it seems to be trending in the millions north every time we come back and have these discussions? Y'all want me to pick somebody? I'm gonna say, I'm just kidding.
Hi, Valerie Murtha, Assistant Commissioner of Finance. The current rate is 3.5%.
What is it? So that everyone
it's-
watching and everyone on the dais can understand
the-
exactly what it is.
It's 3.5%. That's when they negotiate the new contract and they give us what their rates are, they'll ask for the 3.5% to be built into the contract for every year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next up, Vice Chairman Gillespie. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. Thank you all for being here. A couple questions here. First, I'm going to just start with the local correctional officer training fund. Sure, just y'all are familiar with this, the audience, for when phone calls are made between inmates, a certain percentage goes into a fund to help with things. And I just would like to know, looks like as of this summer, the balance for this fund was about $3 million. How exactly is that used? Can you walk us through that?
Well, we're going to have to
Okay.
get back to you on that, Chairman Gillespie. I don't have that information in front of me.
Yeah, that's fine. And we can talk later after this about that. But secondly, and I don't know if the terminology here is correct, but Shelby County, the Shelby County Jail, 201 Poplar, currently has at any time, and I've had conversations with your department about this before, at any given time between 30, as many as 100 state inmates that are awaiting transfer. And for whatever reason, it's just, I know y'all can only move so fast, and I understand that it's a big system and you have to have a bed, and it may be across the street or it may be across the state. But it's just a constant something that I continually hear about. It's the biggest jail in the state, 201 Poplar is. It's outdated. There's a lot of issues. And I just wish if y'all could explain to the committee just how that exactly works, where the kinks are, and what y'all are doing to help make that process go a little bit faster.
Well, like I testified earlier, we've increased our intakes from our county jails by 15%. And in Shelby County, we've had a number of conversations with Shelby County and have moved. I don't have the total number with me. How much? I know my Assistant Commissioner, Linda Thomas, who is in charge of prison operations, who does the movement for county jails, can give us the numbers. But I know that when they call, we move. Obviously, we got 95 counties. We look at all the big counties. We opened up more beds at our intake facility at Bledsoe, because that's where they all go from the county jails. We just don't send them anywhere. We send them down to Bledsoe for the classification. So what we've done with Shelby County and all the other big counties is we've given priority to the bigger counties, but we can't forget the smaller counties. So we use a system of just shared percentage of each county jail to take those inmates into our custody. And like I said, we've increased from last year by 15%.
Okay. And that's great. And I understand, I guess, two responses to that. First of all, I just got a text saying the current count right now is 109 that are state inmates in Shelby County custody, which is way too high. We've got enough problems. And you mentioned you have to take care of the smaller counties as well. And I completely understand that. And I don't mean this in a negative way to my colleagues or anywhere else, but the way the reimbursement works for certain counties, they rely on that. Whereas the bigger counties, it costs them money to house them. They're not getting enough as is, and they're already behind. So I just want to make sure that, yes, we have to take care of the smaller counties, but some of the smaller counties that are housing these inmates are being reimbursed in a way that actually makes it whole for them, whereas that's not the case in Shelby County and others.
Well, I'll take a look. I'll take a look at Shelby County when we go back, Representative Gillespie. Usually the county does call myself or they call Assistant Commissioner Thomas, and then we do a special move and we move the population for those bigger counties. So we'll take a look at that when we leave here today.
Thank you.
All right. And we just have a little bit more time left, but I do want to see if we could get an update regarding the offender management and information system. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, just give an update, as well as we kind of finish up also the electronic health records project. If you could just touch on those two.
Yes, I'll turn that over to our Assistant Commissioner, Gail Fenkel. She oversees both of those programs.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Gail Fenkel, Assistant Commissioner, Rehab Services and Other. Regarding the OMS is off to the races, we should say, not up and running. We had the contract, the commissioner signed the contract in October. We had a kickoff meeting in November. We have created 30 work groups to help identify the fit gap for any functionality adjustments that will need to be made in the new system to meet our needs. That's going very well. We've instituted support from across the state from field staff who will be able to play in a sandbox and get a feel for what this new system will entail. It's an aggressive timeline and it's all hands on deck. And we are hyper focused on this, but right now we're in a really good spot.
Okay. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I'm concerned that this presentation has presented more questions than answers. I'm concerned about some of Chairman Halsey's concerns and others members' concerns as well. I'm sensing a bit of tension in the room. I'll be very frank. I'm just trying to get an idea what's going on. I would like to invite the Department of Corrections to come back another time at the end of budget hearings. I know that we've got a snow day that we've got to refill or replace some budget hearings. I'd like to make a request of this committee and the chair that we schedule another date for Department of Corrections to come before us and to answer some of the questions, potentially not be quite as tense as we've been in today. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman and members.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chairman Hawk. And Commissioner, I think you've heard from the committee, and I tend to agree. I think there's been many questions asked, and I think there's a lot of follow-ups that need to happen. And so if you all, Commissioner, someone from your staff would get with my assistant here, we'll get something scheduled, and we'll make sure that we bring you guys back so that you guys can, again, have some answers, and then we may have some more questions at that. So, but I do want to thank you all. I don't want to make light of the fact that you all and your department, your staff, you have a tough job, and we know that. But because of some of the numbers that we've seen from the reporting that you have submitted, I think there's a lot of questions we need to try to get answered. So I'll just stop there. So if we could just have someone to reach out to me. Thank you all for being here. We're going to try to stay on time if we can. So thank you all very much. Thank you again for being here today, Commissioner. All right. Next, we will invite the Corrections Institute and Director Wall, if you'll be making your way up. And again, I'll just remind you as you make your way to the table that we will handle the microphone system, and we're still learning a little bit. So if you'll just wait till that red light comes on before you begin to speak. And also for the committee, I'll remind you as well. And Director Wall, you may begin. And as you begin, the committee is going to quiet down and we're going to anticipate what you've got to say. You're ready to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, committee members, for having me today. My name is William Wall. I'm the Executive Director of the Tennessee Corrections Institute, and we are responsible for jail inspections, jail accreditation, jail certifications for those facilities, training for officers, as well as technical assistance statewide to all 95 counties and 123 facilities. We come to you this year with no ask for an improvement in our budget, and I know Vice Chair Gillespie was asking about the Correctional Officer Training Fund, and that would definitely be us that you want to ask those questions to. So maybe take the heat off the Department of Correction for a minute, and that's our question. So I just want to let you know we've had a stellar year. We're moving forward with our regional training locations. We've recently opened our Jackson training location in the old Tennessee Bureau of Investigation building, and we'll have a new home office and training location, state-of-the-art in Lebanon, as well as Clinton, Tennessee. So I am here for any questions that you may have for me and my team. With me, directly to my right is the Director of Training, David Alola, and our Director of Operations, William Robert Kane. I also have a council and other staff members in the audience if there's anything you need from me. So thank you for having me today.
All right. Thank you, Director Wall. And since you have already mentioned Vice Chair Gillespie, we're going to begin with him. So Vice Chairman Gillespie, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all so much. Yeah, there was a little confusion there before, but the local correction officer training fund, the telephone program there, it's fairly big balance there. Just walk us through how that money is usually spent, why there's a balance there now, and what the future may hold.
Absolutely. Your colleague, Senator Yeager, asked the same question a few years ago, and what it is for training correctional officers as well as staffing to be able to provide training to local counties across the state. What we have pivoted to, it has gone down about $661,000. We are now offering a training equipment grant for every county across the state, which has helped the deduction of that. And we hope to be able to continue that training grant each year. This year's $15,000. We're on schedule for spending approximately $750,000 out of that. Last year was a little higher. It was north of $850,000. So depending on each county's needs, no matter which county it is, we are providing those grants up to $15,000. And as that money comes in, we think it can last us for a good period of time to help them meet their training needs. So on top of providing specialized training and personnel, we have really been able to push that grant out, and it's really helped a lot, especially your distressed and rural counties who maybe couldn't even afford a laptop, and they've been able to get laptops and furniture and things like that for their training rooms. But thank you for the question, sir.
Can I follow up?
Go right ahead. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's very interesting. I'm going to go ahead and pivot a little bit back to Shelby County again. Our jail needs to be replaced. It's a mess. I'm sure everyone in the room knows about that. We're spending money to prevent prisoners right now. Our inmates are tying their bed sheets to the doors to prevent the doors from being opened in the middle of the night so that a violent incident does not happen. I mean, it's very, very drastic situation going on here. And I'm just curious, because we're grasping at straw. I mean, we're literally grasping here. And is there any way that this fund could help with some of that? And are y'all currently working with them?
We work with Sheriff Bonner consistently. Spoke with him last week. We are working on a plan to help them with their situation. We're working along with the County Technical Assistance Service from the University of Tennessee. They have a jail consultant to try to work on really just keeping the place until Shelby County makes a decision on what they want to do with the current facility, whether it's renovate or build something new. I mean, it's been reflected in our inspection reports each year that it's aging and antiquated, and it's at the point where they need to start looking at something else. The $3 million in that fund is spread out across all counties, and that is for the training specifically by code, specifically for training, so they would have the opportunity to purchase items for their new training site or what have you. So it is earmarked for that in code.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Chairman Hill, you're recognized.
I want to say thank you, first of all. None of you three look like Mr. Bass, so that's good. So,
I'm happy about that.
but I just want to say thank you. I spent a good bit of time, a couple of hours, I guess, with y'all discussing one of the counties that we have a jail issue. We've got 2 counties that I serve right now that have issues. And to see the work that y'all are doing to try to make sure that our jails, I know that the taxpayers, they're looking at schools, they're looking at roads and all of these things, but I'm thankful for the work and even the continued work with Mr. Bass as a advisor or whatever with the Corrections Institute. I'm thankful for the work, and I just want to say thank y'all for what you're doing and to try to help our communities and help our counties. So hats off to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Next on the list is Deputy Speaker Zachary. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director. Thank you for being here with you and your team. Question, a couple of years ago, we appropriated roughly $5 million in recurring to expand the partnership with TBR to establish the regional training sites. I think that resulted from 23 to 24, an increase of about 1,400. Can you just speak to the growth numbers and how those served can be attributed to the partnership with TBR?
Yeah, I mean, what we've done is we've reworked the curriculum to where it works best with TCAT and TBR. The issue that the TCATs and TBRs are having at the moment is getting people enrolled. And what we've attempted to do is push this forward to all of the counties. We're actively participating in getting the basic certifications into the TCATs and TBR, but it has not been the fastest roll. Most of what we're doing now is setting up the regional sites to provide access not only to the local correctional officers, but to the TCAT TBRs who are participating in the criminal justice program to provide those specialized training classes and specialized skills.
And if I understand where these are, do you have the breakdown for how many are in community colleges and in TCATs, what the breakdown is?
I do not have that in front of me, but I know Vol State is one of them. We have one in, is it Jackson or David? Our director of training should be able to address this.
David Alola, Director of Statewide Training. Yes, sir. There are currently 19 TCAT locations across the state that are live, and there are six community colleges live across the state. I would have to get back with you with a consolidated list of those locations, but we're looking at 25 locations live across the state right now.
And then in your questionnaire back to us, this year, you responded that TCI provides a recommendation that will save almost $166,000 annually. Can you provide some details on that recommendation and how that savings would occur?
The savings would occur because currently we use a lot of contracted staff through the state contractor or contracting services out. We're currently working with the administration for the possibility of adding some positions in the future. It's not something that that we're necessarily asking for you guys. We're still in current talks with the administration to maybe see how we can get that accomplished because, as you know, contracting people to come in can be quite pricey. And we were looking for some subject matter experts to put on staff long term. And I think that hopefully will come to fruition once we open up our Lebanon and Clinton sites. That way, facilities have more access and more on-demand needs for those specific trainings that they need to fit their needs, such as defensive tactics or chemical weapons or verbal de-escalation. A lot of times these counties can't afford to pay someone to come in, so we bring it in for them. However, sometimes that can get a bit pricey.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, last one, you reverted roughly $2.6 million. Was that, can that be attributed to savings within the training program? Explain that $2.6 million.
Much of that is going to be dedicated for our sites because right now our sites aren't open, so therefore we're not having to pay, for leasing the space because we're working through Stream to get all of that accomplished. However, also I will say this: I'd rather turn in money than overpay.
Yep.
because some of these contractors that will ask to come in and perform a service, and while we may have another contractor who can perform the same service, maybe their schedule doesn't work out. I'm not paying double and triple price. I mean, we go through a bid process. We do everything, the way we're supposed to, but I'm sorry, their product isn't much better than the person who's charging a third. So I would rather turn that back into the taxpayers of the state of Tennessee, and we'll see what we can get done next year.
Well, this committee and our constituents appreciate your stewardship, so thank you for that, and we appreciate your leadership. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Williams.
Thank you, gentlemen. I always do that. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I'm sure you had an opportunity to hear the discussion prior to about the challenges associated with having correctional officers. Couldn't help but Chairman Hicks showed me that you're providing the exact training that or very similar training that's needed for those correctional officers, or maybe correctional officers too. Is that what the goal, one of the goals of your group, in order to provide those correctional officers the training they need so that corrections could use them as well?
We see a lot of transfers. In fact, I'm really not trying to throw anybody under the bus here, but with you guys keeping on raising the Department of Correction pay, I have a lot of complaining sheriffs who are blowing up my phone about that because they have to go back to their county commissions and beg for money and say, up the road, they're paying $20,000-$25,000 more a year than we can pay. And, it's not like the sheriff can up his budget. He has to go to his county commission. They have to look at property taxes, all kind of things before they can. And looking around, I see some of you, I know I've watched some of your local county commission battles with trying to get pay. But the one thing we try to help to offset is, instead of them paying, say, $10,000 for a specialized training to train their officers, we're able to provide that free of charge. And we do it regionally, or sometimes we even go to the agency if there's a big enough demand. That is our modus operandi.
So just to kind of put a bow on it, if you guys you provide to the chairman maybe how many people were there and how many people you train generally on an annual basis, and how many of those people's are placed into sheriff's office or our county jails, and how many of those people are placed into the Department of Corrections?
The Department of Corrections has their own academy. We specifically train correction officers in local jails.
Okay.
And we train approximately a little over 9,000 last year. Yeah, it's more than that. I'll turn it over to the Director of Training.
Director of Training, David Alola. So last year we trained and certified 5,395 officers, which is up roughly 7% from the following year. We monitored the training and provided training to 9,868 support and non-facility support staff. In specific to your question pertaining to specialized training, sir, we provided specialized training to approximately 20% of those personnel by providing specialized training in the area of 1,012 individuals, corrections officers and or support staff across the state.
It's amazing, don't you think, that this is exactly the number of vacancies that we currently have in Department of Corrections, and giving you the ability to expand your services to that group might dramatically improve the outcomes in Department of Corrections as it relates to training of a workforce ready to go to work tomorrow. So I appreciate the work you do. Look forward to continuing the discussion about how your department can help us in a dramatic need that we've seen now for half a decade. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, members. I have no one else on the list. So I do want to say, before I let you guys go, Director Wall, I know I've worked with you several years and several times with one of my particular counties. And I just want to say, I can publicly now say thank you for all the hard work that you've always provided for them and assistance. You recognize, sir?
I would also like to, I know there's lots of counties across the state that are having jail struggles, but as it relates to Cocke County right now, they had two small facilities. They lost one of their facilities in the flood. And I'm attempting to work with the mayor and the sheriff with FEMA to get that squared away. However, anyone sitting here can help with that FEMA conversation with Cock County because it was flooded. It's deemed unusable and they cannot occupy that. And out of the kindness of Jefferson County's heart, they're letting them use their old workhouse. And it's not sufficient for what they have, but it's better than nothing. So I just ask that y'all keep them in your thoughts, prayers, and if you know someone at FEMA, please give them a ring.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, members, I have no one else on the list. So thank you, Director. Thank you, and your staff for being here. All right, we will ask, we're a little bit ahead of time, so I'm going to ask the Inmate Disciplinary Oversight Board if they'll make their way forward. Gotcha. And Director Stahl, you are recognized when you are ready. And again, I'll just remind you that we will turn the mics on and off so that you don't have to worry about that. And you're recognized when you're ready.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman, distinguished members of this incredible committee. It's an honor to appear before you today to present Governor Lee's proposed budget request for the fiscal year 2026. I'd like to recognize board members who are here with me today. On my right is Chairman of the Board, Jerry Vastbinder, longtime former sheriff of Obion County. And to his right is someone that many of you probably know, Mr. Mike Dunn. He acts as our legislative liaison to the General Assembly, and he has worked tirelessly for this session to meet with as many of you as possible and answer some of your questions before today. In the audience, we have Mr. Mike Sheeran, we have Mr. Lee Frank, and we have someone I think needs no introduction, Mr. Dale Carr.
It didn't go unnoticed that you did not give former Representative Carr a microphone. I did notice that.
He specifically asked to not have to come up. Before we begin, since this is our first time before this committee, I'd like to take just a few minutes to present the mission and goals that we've created and that guide our work every day for the past year. There's a presentation in front of you. On the next slide, you can see what it lists as our mission. And in short, our board reviews the grant, denial, and removal of inmate sentence credits for every inmate at each of the state's 14 correctional facilities, which amounts to about 23,000 inmates. We determine whether the sentence credits previously awarded should be removed following the commission of a major Class A offense for an inmate's refusal to participate in an assignment or otherwise. We as a board are extremely proud of this mission and of our goal to ensure and enhance the safety of all Tennesseans. And I'd like to take just a few minutes again, and I know I don't have much time for my opening remarks, but again, because this is our first time before you, to just highlight some of the important work that we've been able to accomplish this year by our very lean 9-member staff. So first, in 2022, there were approximately 2,000 credit days that were removed. In the previous presentation by the Department of Corrections, you heard their chief of staff say that in 2024, after the introduction of our board, that number jumped up to 320,000. As of October of 2024, we had that number at 80,000 credit days removed. So there was a significant increase after that point, which goes to show the effort that they've been making to increase those credit removal dates. In 2023, there was an average of 150 monthly Class A incidents. In 2024, after the introduction of our board, that number jumped up to an average of 1,700 monthly Class A incidents. There's been a double-digit increase in the number of Class A offense codes from 2023 to 2024 after the introduction of our board. Our 9 board members have collectively reviewed over 11,000 discrete Class A incidents in 2024. Which has led to a re-adjudication of numerous cases, resulting in the loss of approximately 900 additional credit days for inmates that would not have otherwise occurred. In 2024, we've been able to provide several legislative memorandums, which considered the impact of sentencing credits that may have played on recently committed crimes, including one that involved the shooting of a Tennessee highway patrolman. We've worked with the Department of Corrections on instituting a new and more comprehensive sanction matrix for Class A offenders. And we've identified dozens of inmates with an EXP release date that did not appear to match their sentence credit reductions in the electronic Tennessee offender management system. And we've been able to notify corrections about those inmates prior to those inmates' release. Gaps in the Department of Corrections disciplinary process and have worked with corrections on remedying many of those, both macro and micro inefficiencies. Those are just some of the accomplishments that we've been able to claim in the past year. We're very excited to continue those efforts into 2025 and beyond. Now, I'd like to just quickly show you this slide to give you a sense of what our board members are doing on a daily basis. And I know this slide is a little bit busy, but what it shows is one board member's work for one institution, in this case, Bledsoe Correctional Complex, over the course of one single month. And they take all of the information that's available to us through the electronic Tennessee Offender Management System or through paperwork available through corrections, and they comprehensively identify all that information and make comments and notes so that we can decide whether it needs second level review and then whether it needs to be re-adjudicated. So for 11,000 incidents, this is the work that's being done on a daily basis by 9 people. So I really want to give them credit for all the hard work that they're doing. In short, these are just a few reasons we've asked for a proposed funding increase to add some support staff to help our board's mission. Currently, we only have 2 staff members to serve the entirety of the board, myself and an executive assistant. And for this budget cycle, we're asking for an additional funding to continue to build out our staff and serve the board more efficiently. Specifically, we're asking for a full-time deputy director position and a part-time IT manager position. We've also asked for supplemental funding, which we'd like to request be made recurring so that we can meet our salary needs in the future, including a cost of living adjustment for the board members and salary increases for general counsel and other staff. In closing, the board is extremely grateful for your leadership and stewardship of the state's resources, your unfailing support for the board and its mission. And this concludes our presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, Director, thank you very much. We do have some folks here that have asked to be put on the list, and we're going to begin with Chairman Hulsey. Chairman Hulsey, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. I've been in your corner from the very beginning of all this. This was the speaker's bill, actually, that I ran to establish this board. And Mr. Dunn here, he's one of the best that there is. And Dale Carr back there, him and I are friends pure and simple, and I'm pure most of the time. But I might have missed the numbers that you gave at the beginning, but a few questions. How many sentencing credits were awarded last year in all the institutions? Do you have that number?
We don't have that number. That is a number that would be available through a query through the Department of Corrections TOMAS site. So what we look at is we look at the cases and whether those adjudications were appropriate. I have not asked our board members to go through and calculate each of the incidents and how much was taken away. We could do that, but it's not part of our regular statistical regression currently.
Okay, so my next question was how many sentencing credits were removed? So you just said, I think that you don't know that either.
Well, we know that in 2024, there were approximately 320,000 sentence credits days that were removed. Our board added an additional 900 to those.
That was going to be my next question. How many sentencing credits have you asked TDOC to remove, and have they?
Approximately 900 days. They have, but there is an appeal process as well. And some of the inmates that we've removed those credits for are currently in that appeal process with our board. So while they're not finalized, corrections has gone into the TOMAS system and changed those days to reflect our decisions.
Okay. I want you to understand that the reason that this board was started is because of what happened to Eliza Fletcher in Memphis. There was an inmate who had 4 years of sentencing credits, and he got out 4 years early, even though he had 51 write-ups in the penitentiary. And he had already demonstrated with 51 write-ups his propensity to not just break the rules, but hurt people. And so he became a safety factor for the public. And I was interested on your mission statement up there where you were talking about public safety. And to me, that should be the number one priority that you have in your board. And that was going to be my questions is how many offenders have you identified in the year that you've been working sentencing credits and what they're for, that you've identified that are like the accused person who was accused of killing Eliza Fletcher? And how many sentencing credits of theirs have you asked to be removed? And when I say that, have you identified people that have committed more than 5 Class A's in a year, or they've got a total of 30 Class A's? People that would fit the profile just like this person that got out 4 years early. To me, that would be the biggest goal in the whole board's purpose, is to identify people who have already demonstrated their propensity to hurt people. And that we need to make sure that, above all, we don't let those people out early.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the question. It's a great question. We actually, we always keep Eliza in our minds. We actually have a memoriam on our website for her as well, just so that that never gets lost in the narrative. In terms of the comparison between the number of inmates that we've seen who would match her killer's similar offense profile, I'd like to ask our chairman to weigh in on that, because the board members are the ones who really look at each individual case, and he has a great idea about what he's seeing in terms of inmates who may fit that profile or not.
Yes, sir. Jerry Vassbinder. In our review of the cases each month, we're averaging, as Director Stahl said, roughly between 1,500, 1,700 cases out of the 1,400 prisons that are just Class A's. Looking through those, if you think of the basically 21,000 inmates that's in the Department of Corrections, it's about around 20% of those are the problem children. And yes, sir, I can think of one case right now that is pending, having more credits taken away, that this individual in the last 12 months has 8 Class A infractions. And those are what are we looking for. And the new sentence matrix that has been developed with the Department of Corrections is a stair-step approach to taking credits away, where the old matrix, basically on a first offense, you had from 0 to 9, then you had 0 to 12, 0 to 15. They always had a 0 in there. The new matrix on the first offense is 1 to 2 months automatically. Second offense, 3 to 4, then it goes up 5 to 9, and then 12 to 15. So a person such as this person I said that has the 8 disciplinaries, Class A's, just in the last 12 months, each one of his, he will lose a year at least of sentence credits. So we are looking at that, and notice that it's a percentage that are your reoccurring people that always want to cause the problems, but you do have some that, and I can go back to people that I have put in jail when I was Obion County Sheriff. I've looked them up in the system, and some of them have been in there 15, 20 years, never have a Class A or Class B. It's just a small percentage that's causing the problem, and that's what we look for and aim to try to take out.
I hope that you stick with that, because that's, to me, the whole goal of the existence of the committee is to identify those people who are dangerous to the public. And along that line, you mentioned this matrix. Let me ask you a question about a matrix. To me, if an inmate stabs a guard, I don't care if he's got 5 years of sentencing credits, he ought to lose them all right there. Would the matrix allow you to take them all away for stabbing a guard?
Yes, sir. That is one of the clauses in the matrix, that if you cause bodily harm to a correctional officer or either an inmate that requires outside medical attention, that you can lose 60 months of credit off of your good or behavioral credits. Plus, you can also be prosecuted by an outside attorney, district attorney's office, and have a consecutive sentence placed on you. But yes, sir, in the new matrix, you can take up to 5 years of their credit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2023, Public Chapter 402 created the board that you all sit on. And we task you with the responsibility to review the grant, denial, or removal of inmate sentence credits for good institutional behavior and to determine if sentence credits previously awarded should be removed. Our only real ask is that you take that extraordinarily seriously, and I think that you are. Obviously, that takes a lot of coordination with TDOC. And former Representative Carr and I are good friends, and I've talked to him since his appointment a lot about just kind of his journey on this board and what has and has not occurred. I will follow up on what Chairman Hulsey has said and only add this. Whether someone is dangerous or not, our ask in the legislature of you all is to be that stopgate measure to ensure that if someone has earned credits, fine, they're supposed to get those credits. If they're doing what they should behind the prison walls and they're supposed to get credits, they should get them, and TDOC should be granting them. However, if the opposite is true and they're just sitting there doing time and are sentenced to a life of boredom and could care less whether or not they're changing their ways, well, those folks obviously would not get their time because they're not doing what they should and should not get out earlier than the very end of their sentence because they have a higher recidivism rate. So with that in mind, here's my questions. Has TDOC been cooperative in your review process?
We provided an annual report, and I don't know if all the committee members have been able to review that. As part of that annual report, we did make note of some operational inefficiencies that we did identify as issues that we're still trying to work through with our cooperation with the Department of Corrections. We have a good working relationship with the Department of Corrections. As you noted, it's necessary. But we have found some areas that we've discussed with them that we'd like to increase those efficiencies and make that relationship even better. I don't know if you're asking for specifics of those or if you just generally want to know whether those exist, and some of them do.
And let me be crystal clear. I mean, all I'm asking for is an answer to that particular question. I have some follow-ups, but has TDOC been cooperative in the review process? And if you can, just yes or no, let us know.
I would say yes, generally, but that's not without its difficulties as well.
Yes, with some improvement. How about we say that? And then have you been given access to TDOC's TOMAS system?
We have been given access to a number of screens in the TOMAS system. We have asked for additional screen access that we have not received. So we have not been granted full access to the TOMAS system, but we have been granted some access.
Any reason why not? Or what are the reasons you should be given that you haven't been given full access to that?
The explanation that we've gotten from the Department of Corrections is that some of the access that we've asked for includes things like the visitation screens. Our members have asked for access to that screen because we believe that understanding what punishments were put in place by the disciplinary board helps us understand why the disciplinary board made that decision before we do a second level review and change that decision. TDOC has expressed to us that they don't necessarily agree that we need access to that screen because it doesn't include necessarily sentence credits. So that's an example of a situation where we've asked for something, we haven't gotten it. And the reason for that is because TDOC has determined in their own interest that perhaps that isn't something that falls within our mandate.
And if there's something we need to change in statute at some point to ensure that there is full compliance and access to that, if there's areas that we've left gray that we need to make black and white, we'll be happy to revisit that. But again, the goal is that you all have the tools, and I'm glad to hear that they're cooperating. And that's the same thing I've asked TDOC before, and they said they are cooperating. They've mentioned some of the same things you have on areas that could improve, but I'm glad everybody's at least working together. Let me ask this. Since its creation, how many credit reviews have you conducted? Since your creation, I shouldn't say it, but since your.
Well, that's a two-pronged answer because we look at every single Class A incident. So the 9 board members have done an initial review of 11,000 908 incidents for the calendar year 2024. We have done second level review of no fewer than a dozen of those cases, which has resulted in an increase of 900 credit days removed. We actually have a public meeting tomorrow, and at that meeting, we have 15 cases that we'll be reviewing as well and taking more time away. So it's a fluid answer, but that's the answer I can give you today.
And really just two questions left. What are the main obstacles that you face? And I know you've referenced a couple just in dealing back and forth with TDOC, and I hope over time that continues to be alleviated. But what are the main obstacles that you face in conducting these reviews?
The main obstacle that we face is we have a very limited support staff. It takes a great deal of time. Actually, two of our board members, the chairman and another board member, they volunteer to go through the eTOMAS system on a monthly basis and extract the Class A incidents to make sure they're all being captured. It's been explained to us through the Department of Corrections that the eTOMAS system, as I think most people are aware, is a very old system and requires constant coding upgrading. When they changed the Class A infractions in 2023, moving into 2024, some of those Class A infractions were not coded correctly inside of the eTOMAS system. So we have two board members that go through manually all of those cases to make sure that our board is capturing every single Class A incident, whether it shows in TOMAS as a Class B, but now should be a Class A. So they do a lot of manual labor in that regard. And then we take those average monthly incidents of about 17 to 1,800, we randomly distribute them to each of the board members, and then each of the board members do a very comprehensive review inside of TOMAS to make sure that they're seeing everything they need to see. So some of the difficulties that we have, getting back to your question, is how we deal with that flow of information and how we're able to consolidate and extract that information from the TOMAS system. So that's why we're asking for an IT support staff member who could possibly help with some of that. We also right now don't have legal counsel. So we go through the Attorney General's office for those needs. There was an allocated budget of $115,000 for general counsel. We have reached out, we've interviewed people at that price point. Some of the difficulty we have with hiring at that price point, however, is DOHR has a general counsel position template that goes between $117,000 per year all the way up to $188,000 per year. So we're trying to hire a general counsel below the minimum that DOHR has identified for that position. So we also have some challenges with hiring staff at comparable wages.
I will say this just by coincidence, because I am an attorney. It may surprise you somewhat that there have been multiple attorneys that have reached out to me that are very interested in that job and I think have applied. So while it may be a little under market rate out there, I know there's been some interest from some very capable attorneys because, quite frankly, they've reached out to me to say, look, what do these folks do? And is it a good thing to apply for? And in every instance, I've said, absolutely, they do a good job. So let me ask this one last question here. So if either a victim, district attorney, member of the public, member of this body were to know of a case that is coming up and for whatever reason is this person's already been notified they're about to be up for the parole board. Maybe they've been notified they're going to be released and they have concerns that for some reason within the TDOC system that maybe that person is getting out too early. Or conversely, a family member of an inmate or someone else that thinks, oh man, this person really should have built enough time and it should be released by now and is not. So how does someone reach out to you all and what is the best method to get that information over to you so that you can review a case?
So I would say there's two best practices in that situation. And I have specific examples. I'd rather not name people, but we have had public interest at our public meetings. We've had inmate family members who come and explain their situations. We've personally looked into those incidents. We've also received emails through our website. We have a board-specific contact contact for email. So I would say that the two best practices for anyone who might need our assistance or would want to reach out to us is first, come to any of the public meetings, and our board is I would say one of the most gracious out there when it comes to listening to anyone who might need the services that we're offering, or go through the website and they can email or call us directly. All of that contact information is available there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Next on the list is Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the reasons I got on the list is because I really want to put a little pressure on Mike Sheeran back there. He's back there hiding in the back where, sitting in the back like the bad kids used to do in school, right? Trying to hide. But I just want to say, hey, congratulations. That's my guy. He was one of our precinct commanders and one of our deputy chiefs in Memphis, and I think the world of him. So I want to give him a hard time and say that. But also want to ask, are y'all the ones responsible for turning over information to the DAs when these infractions happen, or is it the DOC?
That's still the Department of Corrections.
Okay.
We have asked for that information because we'd like to continue to track it. And we also communicate with the Department of Corrections when we feel there's an incident that does require outside review. But the responsibility falls on the Department of Corrections to actually contact those that prosecuting DA and see that case moves forward.
Okay. And the access that you say you're not getting, right? Is there a specific reason that you're not getting this access, and why is this access important to you, and why do you feel like you need this access?
The reason that I would say we run into the most significant issues with our cooperation with the Department of Corrections comes with the interpretation of our mandate. The statute is clear, but it's also broad. And sometimes our members, our team interprets the statute beyond what the Department of Corrections would interpret it. When that happens and we're forced to ask for something that they've determined perhaps falls outside of our mandate, that's where the tension occurs. Similarly, with regard to the TOMAS access, there have been a number of screens that would give us a more comprehensive view of the disciplinary process, which we think is important to understand why the decisions are being made by the disciplinary board at the beginning. So by the time it gets to our level, we have a good understanding of why those decisions were made before we decide to come in and change it. Some of the access to the TOMAS screens would allow us to do that, and the Department of Corrections feels differently about the necessity of that access. So we've asked for the visitation screens, and I can't think of any other screens that we've asked for that we haven't been given. Does anyone know? There are a few, and I'd be happy to email the committee with the rest of those. But that's, I think, where some of the tension comes in, and the screen viewing access that we've asked for.
Right. I think the information that you've just given us is very important information. The lack of clarity or the vagueness in the code, where's that area specifically, and how does it need to be fixed? You're talking to the people that can fix it,
So there's a couple of answers to that question. One of the areas in the code that offers some ambiguity is the code asks us to ensure that the decisions regarding inmate sentence credits are grounded in certain when we grant, when we deny, when we review sentence credits. It says that we have the authority to do that. But it doesn't say necessarily what that includes. And so it opens up some ambiguity. For example, when we explain that in order to conduct that comprehensive review, we would like this information, but that information doesn't necessarily say the words sentencing credits, then there's a bit of tension about how far that type of language actually allows us to go. Another example of where the language in the code might seem, I don't want to say it's ambiguous, but maybe broad, is it says that we have access to all of the TDOC employees, but it doesn't necessarily say when and how we get that access. So TDOC has asked that when we want access, we have to go through them, and it's a process to make that happen. Some of our board members have expressed that that portion of the statute should allow them access at any time. So again, that's where some of that broadness plays into the overall decision making.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's good information. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Next on the list is Chairman Williams.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your hard work, in spite of the fact that you have to deal with Dale Carr very often. So, I will say, in complete transparency, I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm going to ask you. I have been in contact with multiple times this body, particularly the speaker this year with the constitutional amendment as it relates to victims' rights is really important to this body to make sure victims are heard as it relates to this. I've had a contact from two families based on two separate inmates about behavior posting on social media websites somehow while they're incarcerated, and them getting, unbeknownst to them, credits for time based upon good behavior when their their offenses didn't allow for that. I reached out to the Department of Corrections and was able to get some clarity regarding that. But you were talking about how people can contact you. Are you in contact with the victims' rights coordinators in our district attorney's office as it relates to victims and how their input or their knowledge of inmates as it relates to threats like those on Facebook might impact your decision on sentencing credits? Or would you just direct them to contact you on your web page or web browser or on the email address?
I would encourage them to contact us. We have not reached out to all the different victim groups and personnel at each of the counties and the district attorney's offices. Again, we only have 2 staff members, so sometimes it's difficult to make those outreach efforts like we'd like to, which is one of the reasons why we're asking for funding for additional staff members. That's exactly the type of thing that we'd like to be able to do more of, to engage with people who either may not know that we're here yet or may not be sure, the best way to reach out to us and get their concerns heard. So we have not had that type of outreach effort, but we'd certainly love to. We have tried to be as open and transparent and welcoming when we have heard from people. So inmates' families, we get letters from inmates themselves. We've done site visits to each of to several of the correctional facilities and tried to speak with the correctional officers about their experiences, let them know that we're here. The more feedback we can get, I think the better we can continue to evolve what we offer. So we have not specifically moved in that direction for an outreach program with each of the DA's offices, but that's certainly something we'd like to do. In the meantime, we would encourage everyone to reach out to us in whatever capacity they feel most comfortable so that we can engage with them.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'll be reaching out to my district attorney general in his office and let them know better about what it is you're doing as they get contact from victims across the state in regards to the inmates' behavior. I think it's important that there's a direct channel of information from those victim rights groups to your office as well. So I appreciate the difficult and hard work that you're doing.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Thank you. Members, I have no one else on the list. So thank you very much, Director Strauss. Thank you for being here. And thank you all again for your time. All right. We will move right along. Next up, we do have Mr. David Hart, which is the Chief Executive Officer for Tricor. Mr. Hart, if you'll make your way up. Seven, okay. I don't know what that is. Somebody asked me to ask you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and thank you for allowing us to be here to present our 25-26 budget. To my far right is our new CFO, Brian Wilson. He replaced our retiring CFO, Pat Thompson, who you've had in front of your committee for the last 2 or 3 years. And to my immediate right is Demetria Gibson. She is the Chief Transition Officer and General Counsel for TriCorps. Just as a quick agency overview, again, TriCorps is a self-funded agency that was created by Tennessee Annotated Code 4122-401 back in 1994. It's governed by a 9-member board of directors, which is appointed directly by the governor of the state of Tennessee. And we operate on a business model that includes monthly financial reporting and a 3-year strategic business plan and a 5-year capital plan. We're based in 11 locations, including 10 correctional facilities, and then 1 outside facility that's here in Nashville. And as you can see in the presentation, we're into a lot of different businesses. The one I will highlight is commissary that we started at the very end of 2024 fiscal year. It's gone into 2025, and we're seeing really good results with the participation in it and the results of that program. As far as our programs go, we provide work skills, pro-social programming, and cognitive behavior restructuring to all the offenders that are in our programs. We provide pre-release transitional services. That includes life skills, a cognitive behavior pro-social program called Thinking for a Change. And then also we do resumes, home plans, and a variety of other services for not only the pre-release side, but also on the post-release side. We provide post-release transitional services that include document or assistant with documents, medical care, transportation, substance abuse networks, and anything else that we have offenders that come to us for. In 2024, we served 1,265 different individuals in our programs, and they worked a total of 859,000 hours in our programs. As far as our dashboard, and these are the metrics that we stay on top of and report out every month. We have a 3-year recidivism rate in 2024 of 18.4%. Our revenue was a little over $25.5 million, and our cost savings to the state, which is has about 4 or 5 different variables in it, was about $9.8 million. Our 2025 dashboard, the current year that we're in, we have a target goal to stay underneath 20% in our recidivism rate. Our revenue, we're projecting at about $30 million, and our cost savings to the state is increasing. We're hopeful that we will hit around $10.9 million as far as those savings. And all these programs that I'm talking about are coming at zero cost to the state of Tennessee. One of the things that we're very proud of is the performance that we've had on our fiscal audits for the last 3 years. With our 2023 audit finishing up, we again received no findings. This is 3 years in a row that we've gone without any findings or any new findings. Also, the exceptions that are noted or the observations that are noted in the comptroller's report have been steadily decreasing. I think we had 5 or 6 in 2022's report. In 2023, we're down to 4. There's no impact to the revenue or the net income from any of the exceptions or the or zero findings, of course. And we were issued an unmodified opinion from the statements that were provided. For our 2025-26 budget, our revenue is increasing significantly to $61.6 million. That's basically due to commissary, and not all that money is actual counted as revenue for TriCorps, but yet the money flows through our department. Our capital budget is around $950,000, and that's to replace existing equipment, add new equipment as needed, or to fund a new program that we get started up in one of the prison sites. And again, for this year, TriCorps is not requesting any state appropriations or funding. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude my part of the presentation, and we welcome any questions from the committee.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Harden. And again, thank you for being here. The first person on the list for questions is Chairman Hawk. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and Director. Thank you very much. We had a good conversation earlier, and I didn't know that I was going to have some questions that I do now. And I want to go back to the issue of commissary. It seems like, and I'm looking at some of the budgetary issues from the 23-24 year to the 24-25 and the substantial growth, and I'm guessing that's because of commissary. There appears to be a delay in commissary, and I look back on our questionnaire, page 12 of the questionnaire that you all filled out, and with the legal concerns, and there was a protest and a delay in the upstart of commissary. Can you tell us a bit about that, the loss of revenue, where those monies went, and just kind of bring this committee up to date on the delay to start commissary, the legal, what you can tell us about the legal action and where we are at this moment. So thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm going to turn it over to our general counsel in this case. She'll put that hat on and answer your question, Demetria Gibson.
Good afternoon, Demetria Gibson, General Counsel. So we put it out to bid to try to make sure that we had the most competitive commissary as possible. We wanted to make sure that we were able to maintain the prices and to not overly charge any of the offender participants in that program. When we put it out to bid, we actually were anticipating getting a protest because frankly, that's what the bigger commissary companies do, is that whenever it goes out to bid, they actually protest the bid on whatever grounds they can find. So we put the bid out initially in July, ultimately re-released it again in September, awarded it.
Of the year again, tell us the year.
Of 2023. Of 2023, we awarded the actual solicitation to one particular company based on the needs that we had and the needs that supported the Department of Correction. We did receive that protest as anticipated, and based on going through that process of the solicitation and the different steps in our process, it took an additional about 6 months before it was resolved. Ultimately, we were able to have it favorably resolved in our favor, but that time delay is that revenue that we say that we lost. Now, we didn't plan on having commissary when we were budgeting for that fiscal year, so it wasn't a true loss. It's just that revenue that we were expecting after we had released the bid, we didn't receive because of that delay in the protest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And follow up, are we operating in all the prisons? And again, tell me a little bit more about oversight. We've got a vendor that's coming in. Are we saying, go do it? And again, talk a little bit about oversight and as well talk about what we're doing with the revenue. So 3 questions there. I think you got them all.
Okay, I'm going to try. All right, so we have a private vendor, and what that private vendor does is to provide the actual inventory of the different items. All the inventory and the items that we have were selected by the Department of Correction. Part of the reasoning behind the selections that they made were to, in fact, reduce contraband coming into the actual facilities. And so what happens is we receive the inventory in from our private partner, and then we have pick, pack, and ship operations at 2 locations. So we have one at the Northwest Correctional Complex and one at the Northeast Correctional Complex. So Northwest covers about middle of the state to the west in terms of the prisons that it serves. And Northeast covers the eastern half of the state in terms of the commissary programs that it serves. We're not within the private prisons at this time, so we're in all the state facilities right now.
And again, just to follow up, just to reiterate the last question, what are we using these revenues for? Is it just to go back? Tell me what we're using the revenue for.
Absolutely. So I want to just make a quick asterisk on, I know that it looks like a big jump in revenue. That's not necessarily true revenue for us. It's mostly pass through because that's how the Department of Corrections wanted us to set it up on our end to handle that with the vendor. With that being said, the revenue that we are receiving from that is invested right back into our programs and into our participants that we have in those programs. So even across the state, there are different types of operations, but there's one thing that remains the same, and that is the type of programming and resources we provide to our offender participants. So across the state, including in commissary, they're going to have a dedicated transition coordinator. They're going to receive our cognitive behavioral training programs. They're going to receive certifications based on forklift. There's a new one that we just started implementing, and it's tied to supply chain and logistics. So that's something that they will receive as well. In addition, part of that revenue is what pays the offenders that are in that program. We're proud to say that it is by far one of the highest paid positions in the prison setting. And as part of being in the TRICOR program, they're required to have a mandatory savings account. So all of these individuals that are working in our programs throughout the state are not only voluntarily working, but they're able to invest in themselves and invest in their futures for when they go home. They have a savings account that's there to help them upon release.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the clarity. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. I'm always impressed with your program and with your presentation. Do you have a percentage of how many new inmates, if I can use that term, that you put in the program this year compared to last year?
David Hart again, CEO with TRICOR. Representative Shaw, we've lost a few from the program. One of the things that happened to us from the previous year into this year is that we closed a recycling program in Shelby County. It just ran its course as far as with our private partner that was engaged with us there. And so we ended up losing 70 or 80 positions. We have some of those that have come back in other programs, and part of that has come back in the commissary. But year on year, we're probably about 20 offenders down from what we were the year before. So we've actually lost a little bit of ground.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do.
Understand you're retiring then?
I am. Yes, I am.
I'm going to miss you. Representative Hawk, I will answer one more thing on your question about what we do with the revenues. And again, it's just a TRICOR program, so it all goes into paying all of our expenses and all of our recapitalization that happens in our programs.
All right, next on the list will be Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know you spoke with us earlier about the great things you have going on at your institution, and just want to follow up on the commissary and ask, can you speak more about how that really contributes to the reduction of contraband in our prisons?
Yes, sir. One of the things that happened prior is that each of the institutions had their own commissary program. And so the Department of Correction was basically buying from 5 or 6 different vendors at each one of those 11 sites. And one of the things that Commissioner Strada and I talked about was if we could do this program that we're currently doing, we're buying from one vendor and it's delivering only to 2 sites. And then we're pick, packing, and shipping, which then we have greater control over what happens and what goes into each of the packages that go to the sites that then go to the offenders. So that whole process of delivering and picking, I think, is the key to reducing that contraband in that particular area. I don't know the true percentage. I know it's reduced the amount of contraband that was coming in that piece of TDOC.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Oh, I'm sorry.
Every time. Okay. Sorry, Demetria Gibson, CTO, General Counsel. If I might just add to that, one of the things that makes it very unique with TRICOR running the program is that the individuals that are picking the items to put inside of the bag that they're going to receive have no idea who it's going to. And so previously, the offenders that were working in that commissary program knew exactly who was going to receive which bag of goods, if you would. And so if I wanted to slip something to someone, it was easy for me to know because I know who this bag is going to. In the TRICOR program, they don't know who it's going to whatsoever.
All right, thank you. Quick question. I'm just curious about, I know that TRICOR has the authority to go into contractual agreements with like cities and counties to provide work training programs. And I'm just wondering how many counties do you have that actually take you up on that? And then also as a kind of a follow-up, does the program also apply to any state inmates that are actually being housed there in the counties?
To answer your second question, yes. To answer your first question, we've been involved with 2 different counties at this point. Neither one of them we're engaged with right now. One of the things that we're finding really difficult is in our programs, we require space to be able to put a program in, whether it's manufacturing or whatever. And most counties do not have this. Shelby County did, and that's one of the reasons why we were there. We were in Henderson County for about 12 months probably. And the one thing that we were doing with them, we knew right away that that was not going to be a long-term program for us. But what we did is we started the program. We got their people trained in how to deliver the different programs that Tricor does. And then once they felt like that they were in a position to be able to take that and self-manage it, then they took that program, because that was, again, with a local business where they were providing offender labor. So, but our big problem, I think, with the counties and cities jails is just, space for us to do what we do. Now, one of the things that we've been working really hard with the counties on is giving them ideas as far as what we can do as far as just coming in and programming or selling them particular products or providing services other than, putting a full-scale program in place.
Okay. All right, members, I have no one else on the list. So I do want to thank you all for being here. Thank you very much for answering our questions and for your presentation today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
All right. Up next is the Board of Parole, and I'll ask Mr. Jim Provides to please come forward. And Director, if you would just introduce your staff, and then you may begin when you're ready.
Oh, thank you. Am I on? I'm good? Okay, now I can hear the red. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Hicks and members of the committee, for having us here today. I'm Roberta Kustoff. I'm here on the behalf of the Board of Parole. With me today is Jim Proviance, our Executive Director, Rob Clark, our General Counsel, Cindy Taylor, our Parole Administrator, and Amber Limeberry, our Parole Administrator for Board Operations and Hearings Division. And then Sarah Snyder is also here with us. She is our Legislative Liaison. Of course, please feel free to reach out to her or any of us if you have any questions after this meeting or if we can be of any further assistance. This past year, we have been able to operate within the same budget we've requested the past 2 years. And while we initially thought we would need an additional position within our IT department, circumstances arose which made that request unnecessary. I am requesting that we receive the same budget as we requested last year with no increases. Your generosity to our agency has enabled us to upgrade our equipment, hire additional staff, and continue to modernize the agency to better serve the people of Tennessee. We pride ourselves on being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and spend only what we need in order to advance our mission, which is to minimize public risk and promote lawful behavior by the prudent, orderly release of adult offenders. We have 84 total staff members, including board members, our executive director, hearing officers, and support staff. We are located throughout the state. Hearing officers conduct non-board level hearings in prisons and the hearings in the jails. These hearings are conducted via video or in person where video is not currently supported. Board members hear the most serious cases, including murders, rapes, aggravated kidnapping, and rape of a child. In holding these hearings, the board members and hearing officers take very seriously and adhere to the standards set forth in our guidelines. Those guidelines include, but are not limited to, reviewing the support and opposition, assessments within the file, programming, and the background of the individual. We also review the audio of prior hearings that have been held, and due to your generosity, continue to assist victims that would like to be heard with recorded victim statements. We preserve those recordings for those victims that might not be able to attend in person or might choose not to attend. As you can imagine, sometimes a parole hearing is the first time a victim's voice is heard due to plea agreements or other circumstances, and therefore it can be a daunting and emotional experience. Being able to have the option to submit a video statement that can be uploaded to our system for all the board members reviewing a case can be helpful to that victim and enables us to use technology available to modernize our hearings. I'm very happy to report to this committee that the number of recordings we have done has doubled over the last fiscal year, and we continue to look for ways to make this option known to victims. The board is comprised of 7 full-time members. We are appointed by the governor. We serve 6-year staggered terms. We are charged with making decisions about which eligible offenders are appropriate candidates for parole. We also vote on every parole hearing held. We also process the executive clemency applications and make non-binding recommendations to the governor. Governor Lee has been granting clemencies throughout his tenure, wherein prior administrations have been granted clemencies at the end of their terms. Governor Lee has done so consistently throughout his term. This past December, Governor Lee granted 43 pardons. These clemency hearings are done by the full board in attendance in Nashville and not via video. The Board of Parole has received 453 clemency applications during fiscal year 2023 through 2024. 295 of those files were reviewed by board members in that fiscal year. We held 49 clemency hearings during that fiscal year, and 3 of those were commutations, 45 were pardons, and we heard 1 exoneration. Of those 49 clemency hearings, 43 of those were recommended for clemency. We, during the fiscal year 23 through 24, we conducted 13,361 hearings. Of those, 752 were board level hearings. We also issued 2,310 parole certificates, and we've revoked 1,636 offenders for parole violations. Our Victim Services Department received 1,649 calls from crime victims or their family members and attended parole hearings with 598 victims. We processed 3,717 letters of opposition, victims' impact statements, and petitions. We also registered 487 crime victims or family members for notifications of hearings, decisions, and releases. We assisted 40 victims and interested parties with recorded video impact statements for those parole hearings. And again, thank you for granting the victims the ability to make a recorded victim impact statement. So this fiscal year, we've assisted 36 victims. So we're on par to go ahead and double the pace of the amount of recorded videos that we did for the prior fiscal year. And we, again, look forward to growing this program. For our budget, the fiscal year 24-25, our budget is $12,844,000. We are not requesting any additional funding or new positions. Recent budget needs have been met, and we believe we can operate efficiently this year under our current base budget. Again, we appreciate you fully funding our request last year. We believe we can operate under that base budget. We also were asked to prepare a 1% reduction plan. And within that plan, we submitted a reduction totaling $122,300, which included rentals and insurance reduction of $5,800, third-party professional service of $2,500, staff training reduction of $28,500, and we also reduced our out-of-state board travel and training of $15,400. We also submitted a staff reduction of position of $70,100. The governor's budget did recommend reduction in the following areas: the rentals and insurance, the third-party professional services, the staff training, and the out-of-state board travel and training, for a total of $52,200. It is our opinion that we can fulfill our mission with these reductions over the course of the next fiscal year. We would prefer not to lose the training opportunities for our board members and staff, but again, feel we can fulfill our mission with the proposed reduction. I would like to update y'all on our video jail hearings coordinator position that was granted to us that we received in fiscal year 2023 through 2024. All the hearings in the state and private prisons are conducted via video. 27 counties, which is about a third of the counties in Tennessee, currently conduct their hearings via video. We are also looking at expanding that, of course, to all of the counties. The hearing officers participate via video and the public attendees still participate in person. Our goal is to have all hearings conducted at county jails via video by July 2026. And phase 2 of this project will include virtual participation by all hearing participants. In just setting forth the benefits of this program, we believe this will reduce expenses for hearing officer travel to county jails. It will increase our hearing officer efficiency as a result of reduced travel time and allow fewer hearings conducted by our hearing officer supervisors, so to allow them more time to supervise the staff, and also to improve the safety during the hearings by having them conducted via video. We'll have fewer hearing cancellations due to interrupted access to jails due to health concerns and also weather concerns, as well as from last week, the winter weather had us cancel a few hearings because we could not make it to the facilities. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to address this committee, and I would also be remiss if I did not thank the staff who are here with me today who helped me prepare for this hearing. And at this time, I'd like to answer any questions that anyone may have.
All right. Thank you, Chair Lady Kustoff, for being here today, as well as the staff that you have with you. All right. I do have a couple of folks on the list. Let's first go with Chairman Faison. Chairman Faison, you're recognized. Okay. We won't go to Chairman Faison. Let's go to Chairman Williams. Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Only partly recognized. Oh, there we go. Ms. Roberta, it's so good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Glad to have y'all here. I hope that Barrett Rich is like one of your best.
Absolutely.
And we didn't know if we should send him from here. And some of us miss him and some of us don't. But
yes.
And I hope he's watching. So according to your presentation, your goal is to have all hearings conducted at county jails via video by July 26. Phase 2 will include virtual participation by all hearing participants. Does the Board of Parole assist county jails in setting up virtual participation capabilities? Who covers the cost? Is it left up to the counties to cover, or does the state pay for it?
I will have our director answer that.
Thank you. Jim Provence, Executive Director. Thank you for the question, sir. The technology is free. We're using Microsoft Teams. All of the requirements for the jails are if they just have a laptop with a camera and they can get the offender in front of that laptop. We have not run into, with the 27 that have gone live, we have not run into any problems with them not having the equipment. We do a little brief training to show them how to get on Teams. And one of our ladies in board operations made a nice little tutorial leave behind that we send. We have run across a few agencies, mainly remote, that say they don't have internet or they don't have laptop capabilities. And we're hoping in our second phase, we can possibly look and see if there's any grant money available to them so we could steer them in that direction.
And the follow-up question, are there counties or city municipal jails that aren't involved in this? Are you trying to get this completely spread through it? Did I hear you say only 27 so far? And so you're hoping to get all 95 counties eventually? Is that what I'm understanding?
That is our goal, is to have every county online.
What would the hindrance so far be? Just technology, high-speed internet? Like my county, unfortunately, if you were here for an earlier presentation, my jail got wiped out by Hurricane Helene. So we're housing people in several counties around us. Is it something like that, or they just don't have technology yet to do this?
If I can be blunt, some of them don't have the technology, and we run into some areas where they just don't want to change. And if we have a jail that maybe we only do a dozen hearings a year, you know, might could justify them not wanting to go with the program. But we're hoping as more jails come online, the word's going to spread how easy it is, and they'll want to join because they're not having to secure our staff that comes in. They don't have to worry about contraband. They don't have to worry about sickness. So we're hoping as we grow, we can sell this. And I believe, I may misquote this number. I think we've got 36 total that want to go live when we are able to allow outside participation to participate via video and not come into the jail. That's been a big selling point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. I will learn one day. Thank you all for coming today. In your questionnaire, as you know, corrections is updating and replacing their TOMAS system. I noticed in your budget questionnaire, you didn't really have any costs associated with what a cost might be to your department because of that change. I wondered if you're expecting any change or any costs that might be unforeseen, and do you have the ability to manage that change if it were to arise?
Again, I'm going to have our director, I believe I can answer this, but I'm going to have him, he knows that the words interface and how to use them properly in a sentence.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Jim Provence, Executive Director. Thank you for your question. As of right now, we are going to interface with the new MyCase system, which means they're just going to tie into our system. We're going to tie into theirs.
Okay.
We do not anticipate any costs. That's the reason we did not ask for any funding. We are working closely with the vendor and TDOC.
Okay. Just as a follow-up to the previous group, I appreciate the work that you're doing in victims' rights. It's obviously sometimes you're collaborating with our attorneys general as it relates to that sometimes, but most of that heavy lifting is done by you guys. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing there. I did hear earlier, though, that based upon credits, time credits for inmates that through the new program, that sometimes victims don't know that they can communicate with them. I told that department that I was going to direct my district attorney general in case they did have victims who were concerned about sentencing credits for those offenders of which their family or they may be a victim to. It's my hope that you guys could also develop a pathway or a way to communicate between the two departments so that they can be made aware of the victim's response or knowledge. I was shocked to find out that, as I told them, I was shocked to find out that many victims are watching sentence credits as it relates to those people that perpetrated those crimes on them. And so your coordination with them through victims' rights, I think, would be beneficial prior to somebody coming up for a probationary hearing or a parole hearing as well. So thank you for your work.
Respond to that as well. I do, when I am having hearings and other board members as well, if there are sentence credits, I try to get that on the record. And so they understand the ramifications of that within our hearings and how that moves forward. And I do, again, appreciate the funding that we've been given for the recorded victim statements. I think that is a hurdle for some that may not want to come in person, but be able to have their voice heard. So thank you again for funding that aspect. And we will do our utmost to be a way for people to communicate and get access to the process.
Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. I just need confirmation because I get this call all the time. My son had 6 parole hearings and got denied, sometime 9, sometime 10, 12, and he got denied every time. You all do give reasons why you deny paroles. I just need confirmation, but you do that. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. And yes, we do. We by statute are to tell people how to improve their chances for parole. And we do that in every hearing. Yes. Across board level and hearing officer level. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. I just want to confirm that because that's what I always get. And I just wanted to confirm that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Chairman Hulsey, you're recognized.
I'm seeing 39. Thank you. I appreciate you being here as well. And I want you to know that Counselor Clark has always been available and approachable, and I appreciate him very, very much for that and your organization for that. It means a great deal.
Thank you.
We had a discussion, and I just wanted the folks on this committee to hear your answer. We had a discussion with Department of Corrections on the fact that we've been on a safety valve for years. And that, to be honest with you, irritates me a great deal. Would you explain exactly what hoops you have to jump through when we are on a safety valve posture, what that pushes your organization into?
So the Board of Parole, the Department of Corrections determines, and they do sentence calculations, and they determine when it is time for us to have a hearing. And we don't determine who comes up for parole. So they will calculate the sentences and then make that determination. And because we've been operating under the safety valve, I may, again, direct this to our general counsel, but we will just have the hearings. It may increase the number of hearings that we have or the timing of those hearings, but I'll let him answer that, supplement my answer.
Rob Clark, General Counsel for the Board of Parole. Thank you for the question, Chairman. As you alluded, we've been under safety valve, what's called the safety valve, for a number of years, the Prison Emergency Overcrowding Reduction Act under Title 41. That's been continuously invoked since the statute was passed in special session in the mid-'80s. And as Chairman alluded, we play no role in determining who comes up for those hearings. I'm sure it results in additional hearings, but the entire time I've been with the board, we've been operating under it.
All right, thank you. Representative Sparks, you're recognized.
Thank you. I know I shared with this committee a couple of weeks ago with Office of the Courts about I attended a parole board hearing for a guy, Justin Bashir, and it was really touching. The young man was 18 when he got in trouble selling drugs, and he's like 40 now. He's a minister, and he adopted him and his wife adopted 4 kids from the DCS system. 4 kids. Guy's a true craftsman, does woodworking, and just a phenomenal individual. You know, I shared with y'all or with this committee that I called him in December because we're waiting on the governor. And he was real quiet on the phone. And I thought he got bad news. And he said, dude, your time is perfect. He said, I just hung up from the governor. And it seemed like he was about to get really emotional. But, you know, I've seen this guy, seen the good work he's done. And the board treated him with respect. Staff treated him with respect. And there are chances for other people. And like I say, if anybody, I mean, the media sadly is never going to do a story on this. Phil Williams will never cover this. Justin Bashir is his name. 4 kids he's adopted, him and his wife. Phenomenal story. Should be a movie about it. Sadly, good news doesn't sell, but thank you for what you do.
Thank you for that statement. I would like to say that besides appearing before this body, clemencies are my favorite thing about what the Board of Parole work does, what the Board of Parole does. We do hear stories exactly like the one you just shared, and that's very meaningful work, and so we appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Members, I have no one else on the list. So Chair Lady, Director, and Counselor, thank you all. Other staff, thank you all for being here, and certainly thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
All right, members, without objection, we will now go back into session. Without objection, we're back into session. That completes our calendar for today. Just a reminder that the budget hearings will resume tomorrow morning. Please keep your applause down at 8 a.m. in House Hearing Room 3. Do we have any further business coming before the committee? Hearing none and seeing none, without objection, we stand adjourned.